Up next on the Journal Editorial Report, week 2 of the government shutdown leaves both sides scrambling to end the stalemate. So who's bearing the brunt of the blame? Plus, is Janet Yellen good for the economy? What President Obama's Fed nominee means for your money? And a pair of terror raids end with a big al-Qaeda capture in Africa and reignite the political debate over Guantanamo Bay here at home. Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. Well, week 2 of the government shutdown, and as the parties work around the clock to end the standoff, it appears neither side is coming out of the budget fight unscathed. Gallup reports that 50% of Americans now say they disapprove of the way President Obama is doing his job, and just 28% view the Republican Party favorably, down from 38% last month. Joining the panel this week, Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, Washington columnist Kim Strassel, and senior economics writer Steve Moore. So, Kim, lots of blame in Washington this week about how the administration is managing this shutdown. Some people say they're trying to increase the pain, make it look as hard as possible, closing the monuments and denying death benefits for the injured or the casualties coming back from Afghanistan. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, this has been in some way a repeat of their sequester strategy, which was to do similar things to make this as hard as possible for average Americans. Because the reality is, Paul, that not much of the government is shut down. Something like 83% of spending is still going out on the major things that people care about most, like Social Security, the mail service, etc. So what they've done is focused on these small points of pressure. But that has backfired to a certain degree as it has come out. And that's what happened in the sequester, too, as the headlines started to roll about whether or not the White House has had to take some of these actions that they had and found that they haven't had to do it. They've had to roll back some of this because of the bad press.
Not surprising that if you're running the executive branch, you want to increase the pressure, put maximum pressure on the Congress. That seems to be what they're doing.
Yeah, and it seems as though they're succeeding, Paul. I mean, it's the Congress who's supposed to vote to allow these two things to happen. And, you know, yes, the Republicans are really getting hit hard. There's no question about it. And I think it's going to cause significant problems for them going forward in these elections, such as the Governor Cuccinelli in Virginia, who's
Which
got
is
all
this November.
This November is all those suburbs in Northern Virginia, a lot of federal workers. So, you know, Virginia could go Democratic. But let's not doubt the fact that Democrats are being hurt as well. Nobody in these polls is above 50%. The American people are pretty disgusted with Washington generally, and it's hard to predict where that's going to play out over the next 3 years.
Steve, how do you see the blame game here in terms of who's taking most of the hits for the shutdown, which is not popular with the American people?
Right. Look, this is the Hatfields versus the McCoys. I mean, there's just no love lost between these two parties right now. Let me just defend the Republicans for a minute. I agree with Dan's analysis, but what they would say, Paul, is, look, the Congress and the House of Representatives has the power of the purse. And when I talk to Republican leaders and some of the Tea Party members, their argument, Paul, is we have the authority to decide what we want to fund and what we don't want to fund. And that's the argument that Democrats are saying no.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Yes, they have the power of the purse with the Senate.
Right.
Not just one house of Congress. I mean, this is Constitution 101, okay?
Sure.
I mean, you can only one house of Congress, you need two, and then you have to get the president's signature. So there is this natural tension built in here. You can't just dictate from the House of Representatives. I'm not saying that I'm blaming the Republicans. That's just the reality.
It is the reality, and this is one of the first times in a long time the Republicans have basically put their foot down and said, look, we're not funding. So remember, everyone knows this really comes down to Obamacare. Now, I don't think in the end they're probably going to win that fight, but they are saying, look, we have the authority to decide if we don't want to fund something, and that's what this is all again,
Do you think this is working for them, Steve, though? I mean, is it working out for...
No, politically it is not. But what they would say, though, Paul, again, in the Republican Republicans' defense is we have elevated this issue of Obamacare to a whole new sphere. And it is true, as Congress's opinion, approval ratings have fallen, so have the approval ratings of Obamacare.
Last time I checked, Steve, the president wasn't on the ballot in 2014, but Republicans are.
That's true.
Okay, and Kim, I mean, so how do you read this in terms of the damage being done to either side?
Well, look, part of the calculation here, at least on the Republican side, is yes, they are taking most of the heat, the blame when people assign it for having shut down the government, although the president is taking some too in a failure of leadership to stop it. But the Republican calculation here is that voter memories can at times be short. There are a lot of Americans who are not personally feeling the pain of this shutdown, so aren't necessarily furious or angry over it yet, at least.
Right.
And that if they get something out of this in the end that does resonate with the American people for issues like spending and the debt, that may in fact work to their benefit in the longer run.
Dan, you had a budget pivot this week by Paul Ryan on op-ed, or at least a plan to get out of this by Paul Ryan on our pages, the House Budget Chairman, former Vice Presidential nominee of the Republican Party. Did this offering to move away from Obamacare and return defunding to, let's talk about the budget, get a down payment on the debt?
Yeah, I think this is important. I mean, I take Steve's point. The Republicans wanted to say something about Obamacare and about federal spending. They have said it. They've now got to get past this fight over the continuing resolution and the debt ceiling, so they have some space to talk about things like entitlement spending, Medicare, Social Security, and tax reform, as Paul Ryan suggested. Substantive things of which they can have a real argument. These two subjects are a little bit hard to have an argument with the American people. The others are things that the American people can focus on and have a serious discussion about. That's where they have to
and
get.
they could also trade the discretionary spending cuts, the automatic caps that are in place, for something which the Democrats hate, for something
But that's
that
a real
Republicans
debate.
want.
We're not having a real debate right now.
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Thanks to you all.